children of Israel had to leave out of Egypt. They had to fight wars. They had to fight battles just to have a home, civilization.
Right.
But that was expected of the men.
Right.
You just talked about us being willing to wanting to die for our people, or even on basic levels of going to community events, things like that. How do we embrace sacrifice, even if that means having to put our lives on the line as Black men for our betterment of the community?
So I read a quote somewhere that said, physical war is the last resort, right? To battle does not always mean to engage in physical warfare. If we look at how the civil rights movement permeated, a lot of that was violent in response to political mobilization. I'm going to say that one more time. A lot of it was violence in response to political mobilization. We did not come in aggressing violence. We came in asserting self-defense, right? A number of Black men will say, you know, I'm supposed to protect, provide X, Y, and Z, and A, B, and C. I hear you. I understand that. And one of the oldest games in the world is chess. One of the oldest games in the world is chess.
One of the best too.
Right?
Yeah.
But chess is not a game of fisticuffs. Chess is a game of emotional intelligence, regulation, and strategy and implementation. That is what I mean when I say battle. That is what I mean when I say war. But once again, I heard it on the Wu-Tang and American Saga. When RZA went to go stay with his uncle in the South, he said, the largest nation is the imagination. You are more likely to go to war with yourself than somebody outside of you. Can you master yourself first? Can you dominate yourself first? Can you engage in difficult conversations with yourself first? We talk about ancient times, right, brother? I'm Nigerian, right? I forget whether it's a Xhosa or a Zulu saying, but it says a man's first priority is to the land. If you cannot impregnate a land, it is illegal for you to impregnate a woman, because what is that woman going to eat? What is your family going to eat? Right? To impregnate the land requires understanding. To impregnate the land requires strategy. To impregnate the land requires patience. To impregnate the land requires implementation. Once again, we are so stuck on physical violence because that's all we've seen. But once again, even if we talking about gang culture, bro, even if we talking about gang culture, before we got to where it is that we are now, Black gangs used to move with strategy. They used to move with implementation. They used to move with the understanding that we still have to run a business. To engage in physical violence unnecessarily will create disruption for everybody. Ain't nobody gonna eat. You kill somebody when it's necessary. Not because they made you mad, not because they whoop, right? You kill somebody when it's necessary. Now you killing somebody for clout. You engaging in physical warfare because you want to prove that you big and bad. You're engaging like a fucking idiot. Because imagine if the most developed countries in the world operated that way. Nobody would be alive. Nobody would be alive, right? Because we engage in nuclear pissing races. All it takes is one nuclear warhead to set off a nuclear war. Now nobody gets to reap the benefit of anything because y'all want to fuck around with uranium dicks. Like what, bro? You're engaging in a pissing contest, in a dick swinging contest, and you're not thinking about how it is that can be seen as, what's it called when you're doing stuff in public? Public indecency.
Public indecency, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I believe that a number of us as men have lost the art of being gentle men.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Right? Everything does not require a sledgehammer. Some things just require for you to tap. Light touch. Right? So you ask the question, how do we as Black men take on this responsibility? How do we internalize this responsibility? How do we, once again, do manly things? We must diversify what it means to be a man. Genuinely. We must, and a number of men, when we say that, what they hear is, oh, you're trying to make us be more like women. No, I'm trying to assist you in being more emotionally intelligent. I'm trying to assist you in being more strategic. I'm trying to assist you in being more communicative, right? A plane has two pilots for a reason. They have a main pilot and they have a co-pilot. If the main pilot can no longer do what is necessary in order to move that vessel, the co-pilot does the same thing. But you are a shitty main pilot if you do not communicate with your co-pilot. Bottom line, a number of men want to prove that they are men. A number of men want to perform masculinity at the cost of everybody else's safety and sanity. So are you really a man?
Goodness, bro. Self-mastery, right? I've been on that heavy lately, and it's like I'm seeing now boring is fun. Of having routine, having schedule, being consistent, right? Kev on stage recently posted that as well, saying boring is good. I'm like, wow, bro. Like, I've been saying that all week, that was crazy.
He said get addicted to boring.
Come on now. Get addicted to boring. And I think that so many times as young Black men, right, we'll scroll, on social, and you might see your friends at the club or they're with this girl doing that. But then later you'll see that those same friends now got a baby mama or now maybe got arrested. How do we find peace with having peace? How do we find peace in knowing that boring is good, that it is okay to kill it at your job, come back home, have fun on the weekends, of course. I'm not saying be that boring, but like it's okay to have peace. How do we embrace boring?
So you talked about the power of a Black woman previously, and I think that's a very interesting correlate to this conversation. I was watching a conversation with Jason Wilson, and he said a lot of the things that we as men do are because of women. We won't say it, but it is.
I just saw that yesterday.
Right? He was like, the cars, the money, the X, Y, Z, the A, B, and C. You will say that it's not about women, but it is. Right? Dave Chappelle said the same thing. He said, men don't get nice cars because we like nice cars. We get nice cars because we know that women like nice cars. They may not know what it's called. They may not know what the make of the model is, but they see you driving up in something that look nice. They're gonna wanna engage with you, right? What does this have to do with being boring? A number of men engage in the power of Black women through the idea of in-home stimulation. You want to be consistently stimulated, whether it be your ego, whether it be your sexuality, whether you want to be stimulated. You are addicted to stimulation, right? You want to be out. You want to do this. You want to do that. You're addicted to stimulation, right? You have a difficulty mastering the ability. My mama said it all the time. She's like, William, you got to learn how to sustain the mundane, right? The building that we are in right now, because my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, God rest his soul, he was an architect. He said to my mother, when you are building something, you cannot be off by more than like 1/1000th of an inch. If you are, the structural integrity of that place is in jeopardy. Can we imagine if this building was built by somebody who could not manage stimulation? One person, no team, no blueprint, just somebody who woke up one morning is like, you know what, I'm going to lead this project. This building would not have been here this long, right? To become addicted to boring simply means that you have to be willing to consistently fortify the structure that you have built. And if that structure is not fortified appropriately, then you are accountable because you were being irresponsible. All of the things that you just identified, going out to the club, doing this, doing that, being with, now they got baby mamas, woo, this is that and the third. Black men talk about all the time that Black women don't hold each other accountable. And I'm like, I don't know where y'all been at, because I see it all the time, right? I've only seen one instance of a Twitter thread where a Black man was like, you want to know what? I'm going to start off this conversation. I am ashamed of the behavior that I engaged in that got me to this point of having multiple baby mamas. That shit ain't cool. And then a number of Black men chimed into the conversation. right? But this conversation ain't got shit to do with sports. It ain't got shit to do with ass. It ain't got shit to do with money. It's a quote unquote boring conversation. But the boring conversations is where the growth lies. The boring conversations is where the transformation comes from. The boring conversations is where self-mastery comes from. Because in a number of different ways, you are now engaging in something that does not require constant stimulation. It requires you to sit, to meditate, and to think. It requires you to engage in the self-mastery of conversation. It requires you to engage in the self-mastery of implementation and intentionality. And a number of men do not want to engage with that. A number of black men do not want to engage with that because it is intimidating. It is daunting. A number of black men, I believe, have educational trauma that creates an aversion away from places that would expose them as not being as intelligent as they try to put on.
This conversation has truly been phenomenal, bro. I probably got like 3 more questions for you.
That's
man.
cool.
Thank you for your time.
Mm-hmm.
Sexual discipline, what does that look like for a young black man? Because we got OnlyFans at our disposal nonstop. Even like, bro, my timeline is mainly like Black history, mental health conversations, but then Explore page sometimes randomly, you'll see OnlyFans. And I'm like, bro, I be hitting block every single time, but it's constantly coming back. And then I'm thinking about a young kid that's 12, 13. Bro, at 12, 13, we didn't have Instagram. We didn't have TikTok. We weren't on Twitter like that. So I'm like, yo, I can only imagine being at that young of an age, starting to just itemize women of, hey, she's just for sex. How do we start to practice better sexual discipline? Because I see even in our own age group that dudes be looking at girls only for sex, or only to take something rather than this is a human being. So how do we practice better sexual discipline, right?
So if you ask any lay black man how to practice more sexual discipline, they'll tell you stuff like semen retention, abstinence from pornography, X, Y, Z, and A, B, and C. And those, I wouldn't say that they're too extreme. I would say that they are skills that you want to use and you want to implement throughout your journey of self-mastery. But the biggest thing is, because once again, like I said, I work at a hospital, a mental health and substance abuse hospital. And what I say to my clients all the time is like, yo, the trigger or the stimulant is never going to go away. Sex is one of the oldest industries in the world. As long as there is pussy and ass, there will be sex. As long as there is sex around, there's going to be somebody who's going to sell it, whether it be the person themselves or somebody else as a mediator, right? The actual definition for the word pander is to make space for or to give access to something that is morally inept or something that is lascivious, right? It is the ancient etymology for the word pimp. Right? So even if we put it into that context, when we talk about pandering, because I saw one of my memories came up on TikTok. Folks been calling me a panderer and a simp since like 2021. So that shit don't bother me, bro. Right? But when I actually looked up the definition, I'm like, oh, y'all think I'm doing this to get pussy. Y'all think I'm doing this to fuck. Y'all think I'm doing all this research. Y'all think I became a therapist. Y'all think I did 3,000 all this goddamn work for some ass? We talk about the power of black women, right? Talk about the power of the pussy, right? You think I'm doing all this just to get some ass? You have to decenter sex as a transaction that identifies that you are somehow masculine. I can go pay somebody for some pussy, right? There was a clip that was doing numbers, and it was these brothers on a podcast, and this brother, and I always knew it. Because once again, motherfuckers try to play us like we not men. Motherfuckers try to play us like we don't be in the same rooms listening to the same conversations. I hear you talk about it, dickhead. Like, what you mean you making it? How? I'm a man. I got the same thing between my legs that you do, so that you think that we not sitting in the same rooms having these same conversations, my boy? Stop it. Right? Sexual discipline is the ability to acknowledge that it is there and not take it. Right? I lead a group twice a month for Express Yourself Black Man in a safe haven. It's a psychoeducation group. It's all men. And I asked them brothers, I said, yo, what do you all perceive masculinity to be? And one of the brothers said, sometimes being a man is not about what you do, it's about what you don't do. Right? It's not about having the capacity for violence, but being able to have restraint. Right? Sexual discipline is akin to sexual discernment, right? Because once again, if we think about it in its very biological use, it is for the purpose of reproducing, right? You need to understand the lay of the land that you are attempting to inseminate, because if that land is not fertile, it will not grow anything that is necessary for you. That's number one. Number two, we have more than enough psychological data to understand the risks of overutilization of pornography, right? Porn, sex, gambling, shopping, all of these things. Once again, my bachelor's is in rehabilitation services with a concentration in addictions, right? People think that you can only become addicted to substances. No, you can become addicted to processes. Anything that impacts the reward pathway in your brain and reduces those neurochemicals, you can become addicted to, right? Becoming addicted to pornography allows for you to obtain that dopamine response that usually comes through human interaction, right? But a number of men believe that they are so entitled to women's bodies that why should I have to do all of this work? Once again, why should I have to pander to you when all I want to do with you is fuck? Brother, that's a you problem. You lack sexual discipline because there's a part of you that believes that most of your value is attributed to how many women that you can obtain. There's a scene in Baby Boy that was very interesting. Jody said, the reason why I keep running around here having babies is so that there can be something left of me here when I'm gone, right? There are a number of black men who have bought into the stereotype of the hypersexualization of black men because that's the only place where in which we are identified with any type of value. And it's easy. It's easy. It is easy to be identified as a sexual god as a black man because you're already predisposed to be looked at that way, right? But what happens when you want to be more than that? What happens when you get into this space and you recognize, damn, I might have fucked some up? What happens when you now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 children by 3 different women and now you're complaining that you cannot get anywhere? Brother, you attach these chains to yourself. To have sexual discipline requires discernment. To have that type of discernment requires emotional intelligence. Why do you believe that your value only comes with the amount of women that you fucking? Where does that come from? And do you have, once again, the courage to examine this? If you don't, by all means, brother, do what you do. But doing the manly thing means to be accountable. Accountable is to outcome as responsibility is to duty. If your responsibility, if you believe that as a man, your responsibility is to lack sexual discipline, then you are accountable for the outcomes of your actions. That's on you.
Man, what words of advice, encouragement as well for Black athletes who want to be more than just an athlete, especially after sports is done? Because, man, I hate seeing on social media, sometimes where players feel like, yo, I'm useless. I think Lacey, I forgot his first name, but LSU, seeing him once he knew I ain't going to get drafted high, unfortunately unallowed himself. And it's like seeing that, I'm like, man, because, I can't assume, but like in my own thoughts, maybe he thought, man, I can't make millions anymore, or I'm not going to be a superstar, so I'm useless. We've seen it with Colin Kaepernick, right? Mm-hmm. Where you try to speak up and say something, get this nigga off the field, we're going to pay him some hush money, go away. What words of encouragement and advice do you have for Black men who are trying to find purpose outside of their Black bodies serving white owners?
All right, so peep gang. If y'all are watching this right now, I'm gonna look in this camera right here. I want y'all to go follow. I want y'all to go on Instagram and look up Dakota Tyler. DAKATOHTYLER. I think his handle is like D Star Kid or something along those lines. I had him on my podcast. He was a college football player, D1, who got injured. And this brother just got through defending his thesis to be an astrophysicist. So if you watch Deontay Collins, he was like, astrophysicists agree with me. He was talking about
TikTok.
He was talking about I was like, he looked dead at the camera and looked right at Dakota Tyler. That's hard. We had a conversation about it. And Dakota, one of the most impactful things that he said to me, he was like, I had to unlearn how I was brainwashed into believing that this was the only thing that I could do that was of value. Right. So when we talk about Black athletes, and I'm not going to get into the whole, analysis or the comparison between Black athleticism and, the owners and slave plantation and all that. We just going to scrap all that. Right. I need for you all to understand that when you are in these spaces of Black athleticism, you have gained a skill set, a soft skill set that can be fungible in other spaces. What you have to do is you have to be willing to actually do the work that it takes to become an expert in something other than what it is that you know, right? Whether it be a physical therapist, whether it be an occupational therapist, whether it be a sports psychologist, it doesn't matter, right? But you have to be willing to understand that the probability of you being in this long term was jilted from the start. I had this conversation with a couple of young boys, and I consistently had this conversation with young boys. And this conversation is a conversation that is consistently had within the space of Black men. The probability of you getting drafted into the NBA or the NFL, even if we were to combine all of the professional sports teams together, it would still be less than 1%. Less than 1%. You are more concerned about somebody else perceiving you as falling off than you consistently putting yourself on. You got to get over that. Got to. Somebody else is always going to be like, oh, weren't you the motherfucker who this and that? I was. That is not who I am any longer. You have to be willing to pivot. You have to be willing to change course. You have to be willing to deal with what is in front of you, what is coming towards you, instead of what is behind you. Because once again, if you played basketball or if you played football always looking behind you, you would always get shit stolen from you. You would always fumble. You would always be chasing after something instead of being in control of something. Look forward. Look forward.